Now it's time for Farmland News with Fladeboe Land.
Indeed, it is time for Ask the Expert for this Thursday morning, and very glad to have with us this morning on Ask the Expert, Glen Fladeboe from Fladeboe Land. And Glen, good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning. How are you, Jason?
Doing just fine. Great to have you with us here today and bringing some sunshine into our dreary surroundings here today. So we appreciate your time here today, Glen. And as mentioned, here today, just going to first kind of start off basically what you have coming up for land that you're selling.
Yeah, we're busy. I mean, we're very busy. We're abnormally busy, actually, quite a bit busier than we typically are this time of the year. You know, most of the farmland in the state of Minnesota and the upper Midwest is sold, late fall after harvest, early spring, February, March. But, sometimes the business is not always predictable. It's a business that really relies on kind of the life cycles of, when somebody passes away or family transitions. And so, right now, and I think the other part of this, the reason why we're so busy in other land companies, there's just so many other opportunities to invest funds and, treasury bonds or bills or CDs that are paying a very high or much higher rate of return. So, yeah, we've got a lot of land coming up. I, sold a farm just southwest of Benson yesterday that closed. That was 200 and some acres. Just right now, I'll just hit the list of some of these areas that we've got land coming for sale. Stevens County, selling a really nice farm in Stevens County. It'll be north of Chicago in that area. Beautiful farm in Brandt County that's coming for sale later this summer. Multiple projects actually in Green Lake Township of Candy-High County. That's my home area, Jason. That's where I grew up. My parents' farm is just north of Wilmer in Green Lake Township. Mm-hmm. Just east of Eagle Lake. That's a nice area. It's kind of a neat area because it's not just tillable acreage. It's very close to the bike path, very close to Spicer, and a lot of people like owning some tillable land in Green Lake Township just because there's multiple benefits of it. We have a really cool farm in Mamre Township in Candy-High County. That's a really good area, north of Pennock. Some very strong farmers in that area. The land lays nice, strong soils in Mamre Township. We've got a really cool farm, about 119 deeded acres, 113 tillable. All of these, are on our website or will be on our website. We'll be selling a farm in Erickson Township down in Renville County that's coming available. Multiple properties in Pope County, some hunting opportunities as well as tillable land in Pope County. Another farm close to Raymond that we'll be selling that is in Candy-High County. But I want to give a very special shout-out to a farm that's available right now as well, and that's in Chippewa County. The Tyne family, it's a well-known name in the area. The Tynes, of course, great community people. One of the Tyne family members, they actually lived in Rochester, and we're selling two farms for that. Well, we sold one of them, but one is still available. That's 144 deeded acres, 141 tillable acres. It's just west of Wilmer on Highway 40 on the north side of the road. That's a very good area, very strong producers, obviously progressive farmers that, look towards the future. We have had a lot of interest in that farm, but that's publicly listed. So it's basically, first come, first serve. The farm has tile and all of that. So, yeah, I mean, every day is interesting. It's just different. And, Jason, as we've talked about in the past, not every farm that we sell is a public listing or a public auction. We do a lot of private sale negotiations and selling farms, for families individually. Matter of fact, I just worked on this yesterday, an interesting project with a family up by Morris that, helping them on some transitions of how to sell it maybe privately to another family member or their tenant. And I enjoy that work too. It's somewhat complex and it's not always easy. But the diversity of the business is interesting to me.
Yeah, definitely. And like you were just mentioning, Glenn, that, I'm sure people have a, okay, I want to, like you said, private, sell it either publicly or privately. And obviously there are a lot of questions that go with that. And they're like, okay, I want to do this, but, where do I start? And obviously the process starts by giving you guys a call and you kind of lead them from there.
Well, and the thing of it is, I grew up with this, not just in the auction business. We're celebrating our 48th year in the auction business now in this March. But I also grew up with this personally from a farmland, aspect. My mom grew up on a farm up by Sunburg. We still own that farm. My dad grew up on a farm in Green Lake Township. They both, grew up with kind of legacy farms or land that's been in the family for many years. Matter of fact, we own a farm that, my great-grandfather, Sigurd Fladeboe, bought when he came over on the boat from Norway. But it speaks to, so much of our business is emotional. Like, like the project that I was working on yesterday with a family, it's a family that there's many kids, and they, selling that farm is an emotional deal. This is not like selling the Buick.
No, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, exactly.
And so that aspect of the business really drives a lot of the decision making of, how do you honor mom and dad or grandma and grandpa, or there's a way that you can keep it that's sustainable. We'll work through those strategies. And then sometimes, the right path is for it to be sold. I mean, you can't own land forever in perpetuity. And you also can't own it, forever with multiple siblings and then multiple nieces and nephews, because that usually doesn't work. So it's just, every day is interesting. It's an interesting business.
Yeah, like you see, and then you kind of the point you brought up there, Glenn, about how emotional it can be. Like you said, some of these farms that have been in a family for 70, 80, 90, maybe even longer years. And it's just maybe they're thinking, boy, what would such and such think if they were around, and we're gonna sell this land. Maybe maybe there's some, I want to say guilt, but just kind of tough feelings there that should we do this? Shouldn't we do this? Or like I just said, that what they have thought in the past. But so that's I think one of the biggest aspects of it there, Glenn.
Well, and it's also, I think what's really important is very few families that I've worked with in my career sold the farm and then went to the casino the next day and gambled the money away. These are people that when you sell the family farm, you're usually paying your daughter's college education, or you're buying a family cabin for the larger family to enjoy. You're transferring the resources to something else, some other either investment or some other opportunity. And most families are doing this to think about the next generation as well. So it's not like, if you sell a farm, you're just, taking the money and throwing it over a cliff or something.
Yeah.
And the legacy lives on in different forms. Matter of fact, earlier this week I had a fascinating meeting. We do a fair amount of work for people that gift farmland proceeds to nonprofits. And last year I sold close to $7 million of farmland that was gifted to a very large nonprofit in the state of Virginia.
Wow. Okay.
And there's ways that families can look at doing really positive things for others, and that other may be their niece or their nephew or their son or their daughter, or it may be a community foundation. So, it's an asset class it is emotional, but it's significant of what you can do financially, either for yourself, your spouse, or your kids, or a community organization.
Yeah, definitely. And like you just said, to have that legacy live on in that fashion, and obviously to contact Fladeboe Land to get that process started, whenever that may be, Glenn. But also, I guess time maybe talk about some market trends here today in land sales, and looking into your crystal ball, I guess, Glenn, what are you kind of seeing with those?
Well, it's interesting. There's days that the business is more difficult today. I mean, with corn and soybeans where they're at, fertilizer prices are high, input prices are high, and selling a farm when corn is $7 a bushel is not overly difficult. Selling a farm when corn is half of that is much more difficult.
Yeah.
But then there's days that the market is very, very strong. That all of a sudden, the farm is available. If you don't buy it, you'll never have a chance in your lifetime, etc. I do believe a part of the reason why we're significantly busy right now is because there is some concern and unease about the global economy. Every market has a correction. We've had a good run in the stock market, but, there's going to be a correction at some point. And I do believe that's a part of the reason why we're so busy. You take a piece of farmland in southern Kansas County today that was, it's maybe worth $10,800 or $11,200 per tillable. That farm in early 2020 was worth $6,100 or $6,200. So the prices went up significantly. And if you are going to sell, you want to sell when the market is so strong. So I don't, I'm long-term very bullish on farmland. I'm short-term, I would say it's a mixed bag. It really depends on what happens in corn and soybeans and our local yields and, weather and things like that. So, it's a stable asset class, but it does have market movements. I mean, I've been in this long enough now that, my sister and I and my dad, of course, he's worked through many cycles. Matter of fact, I'm looking right now at my desk of a picture of my dad on the Star Tribune in 1983 during the Depression, essentially the Farm Depression.
Yeah.
The Star Tribune did a huge story about it. And then in 2013, my sister and I were actually featured in the Star Tribune when farmland values were super high. But then, in 2015, 16, 17, and 18, they came down again. And that does happen. There's these trends that go up and down. So, long-term, I'm a very big believer in farmland. Short-term, though, you do want to sell when the prices are strong. You do.
Yeah, and that kind of was going to lead my next point, Glenn. I guess that it kind of sounds like they always say when you're with the stock market that people wonder whether is it going to keep dropping? Should I sell now? And obviously they look for advice for that. And obviously it sounds like the same, like you just said, goes for farmland as well. That they can contact you and basically say, hey, do you think this thing is going to rebound, or should we sell it now, or But again, a lot of questions, and you guys will, like I said, be there for them.
Yeah, no, they're welcome to call anytime, and I enjoy these conversations. I obviously grew up in Kansas County. I'm there a couple days a week. It's when people call, I'm working on a project right now for a family that's super close to me personally in Kansas County, and the business is not always about getting paid. I get paid many other ways. It's not always a paycheck. I mean, it's doing something positive for the community or positive for a family. If we can be helpful, reach out. And I do want to put a plug in for one thing that's really personal to me that's been a fun project. As I mentioned, my mom grew up on a farm in Norway Lake Township up by Sunburg, just northeast of Sunburg. I love that farm. I spend a lot of time on that farm. Matter of fact, we're getting electricity to our hunting cabin. It's kind of a big...
Oh, nice. Okay.
But the Sunburg Fire Department, so a good friend of mine, Pat Berg, who's a saint, she's absolutely a saint, reached out to me and said, the Sunburg Fire Department needed a new tanker truck for their fire department. And they were raising money, and they have to raise $150,000 for the fire truck. And so I joined this committee. I've been working with Pat and the firefighters on this. And in the last 3 weeks, in the mail, we've received almost $50,000 in the last 3 weeks of people making donations.
Wow.
So if anyone is listening that has a heart for a fire department that needs a better truck, and like Sunburg's a tough thing because if, there's not another department close, New London's a long ways away, Belgrade, Bruton.
Belgrade, Benson.
Yeah, and so I do want to put a plug in for that. If, you can go to our website, you can call me. I'll put you in touch with Pat Berg, who's leading this effort. And it's cool. I mean, now yesterday we're at $105,000, so we're, another $45,000, and then we'll be able to buy a used replacement tanker truck for Sunburg. And, it's things like this that also bring me a lot of joy,
Yeah.
How can we move the needle for our community in a positive way? And, the response has been tremendous. So.
Boy, has it ever. I mean, it's a fantastic start there, to say the least. And like you just said, people want to, help the Sunburg Fire Department get to that finish line. Just contact you, and you'll put them in touch, like you just said, with the good folks there in Sunburg to get that done. But yeah, I guess that's kind of what it's all about, Glenn. Like you said, giving back and doing meaningful things like that. Plus, I'm sure a lot of other things too that Fladeboe Land's been involved with, like this. here in the past, going back 48 years.
Well, it's been a wonderful career. I mean, we've been blessed to stay busy for all these years. I mean, I'm super blessed. My parents are, in their early 80s, but they're as active and, passionate about the business, I think, as they were 35 years ago. But, when you can look in the mirror and say, God, whether it's selling a family farm and those proceeds make a huge difference for a family or a community foundation, it's an opportunity to do something of fairly decent significance. And, it's brought us a lot of joy. So.
Boy, that's for sure. Well, and it was just, as you were just saying, Glenn, you guys are very busy. So if, people have their eyes on, land purchase, farmland purchase, obviously to contact you guys, you can go to fladeboeland.com or also give you a call. Glenn, what number should our listeners call?
Yeah, 651-208-3262. That's my number, 651-208-3262. My sister is 320-212-9379. You can go to our website, fladeboeland.com, and all of our information is there. And feel free to call anytime, and it's always fun to talk to you, Jason.
Yeah, fun to talk to you, Glenn, and very happy and blessed Easter to yourself, family, everybody there at Fladeboe Land, and always great to have you with us here on Ask the Expert. Looking forward to another good talk coming up here again sometime soon.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
You bet.